I'm Bud, and this is Meredith. We work at the storehouse in the church here. Meredith is the CEO, I guess you want to call her. She's the starter of the whole thing.
I was blessed to start the storehouse, which is actually the food pantry here at Life Church. Pastor Nathan and Rose Lippincott and I got together almost 3 years ago and established a way of providing food and other necessities for those that are in need. We have a food distribution on the second and fourth Saturday of each month, and we strive to make it more than just food distribution, but to meet the needs of those that aren't able to meet them themselves. We help to provide hygiene items, and we have what we call our rummage room, which is kind of like a garage sale, but it's all for free. We have clothing and household items, and more than anything, it's important to us that we provide fellowship and encouragement. And if someone has a need and they're open to it, we will pray with them as well. We are currently serving about 75 families per month, which ends up being about 200 or so individuals. At times it's been as many as 72 families, I think, on one day, and sometimes as few as 20 or 25. But we have a pretty basic core group that comes once a month, and we've really worked to establish some rapport with those that come back on a regular basis.
Actually, not only they come back as a regular basis, they actually helped us volunteer with us too. And now they're part of just coming to the church and also helping on a monthly basis, helping us out with the storehouse.
The lion's share of the food that we provide does come through the USDA. We have a working relationship with them in which we operate under their rules. They come in and do an occasional inspection, and in exchange they help us to stretch our dollar. The church has provided a small budget for us that we use to provide food, and then in addition to that we do accept donations for the rummage room, the clothing and the household items. And we also have hygiene items that will occasionally come through the USDA when they have non-food items. Otherwise it comes through private donations. Some people use their Thrivent money as a grant to help us out to provide that as well. To be honest, most people have contacted me directly and asked specifically as far as what we would need if they were to donate. I will frequently meet people at church to accept the clothing and household goods that we have to pass on. Hygiene items, it requires a little bit more organization, and so we'll meet together and discuss what the needs are. Some people bring them directly on a Saturday morning when we're here getting ready for the distribution, and other people might just contribute some money and say, here you go, get what you need for the storehouse.
Her car is never empty with donations. I'm surprised it still have not fell to the ground. She's always got it full. She's great at couponing, so a lot of times she's looking for the sales, and we always pick up a lot of things like that too when she does it, when we donate.
I'm a big fan of getting more bang for your buck.
She loves the coupon.
Yeah, any donations that come in. And in fact, that's kind of the story behind how the storehouse started. I had learned to coupon and started to accumulate things at home, and he said, honey, I love you, but we have a small house and you need to find something to do with these things. And so I had contacted Pastor Nathan. We'd only been coming here for a few months at that time. And I said, Pastor Nathan, do we have a food bank? And he said, no, but I've been wanting to start one. And so he wrote me into it from day one. It's been quite the adventure.
We met Terry Mamalinga, Mamalega, I think you say it. We couldn't get it right either way. He spelled it out many times for anybody. He told his last name too. She met him first as I worked in the back back there when I had a chance to work, and he came in, and I think she introduced me to him. Says, you need to come meet this guy. He's an ex-vet. He's old, and he won't talk to nobody or anybody. So I came out and I started establishing a rapport with him. I'm an ex-Air Force vet myself, and we kind of share the same kind of interest of EMT. He was an EMT in Vietnam for medics for the Air Force. So we kind of took care of him on helping him with what we can in his food, in his needs he has. But His story was, every time we come, he couldn't get all the food we had because he couldn't eat some of the stuff because he was kind of sick at the time when we met him. So.
When I first met Terry about a year and a half ago, he kind of came in and looked like a lost puppy. He didn't know really where he needed to be. He kind of bypassed the line and stood over to the side. And so I approached him and I said, "How can I help you?" And so in typical Terry fashion, I came to become familiar with. He introduced himself and he informed me that he was hard of hearing and you have to look him straight in the eye.
Yep.
And he was kind of a grumpy old thing.
Mm-hmm.
But as per our mission in the storehouse, we didn't want anybody to feel unwelcome or unloved. It wasn't just about feeding people. It was about meeting more than that as far as their needs went. So I introduced myself to him and I asked him how I could help him. And he informed me that he didn't have any teeth.
Yeah, he had no teeth.
He couldn't eat a lot of the food that we provided. And so I told him some of the things that we had available, and he said, "Well, I just really don't know what I can eat." So I took him by the arm and I led him to the back room, which was very non-traditional for what we'd been doing up to that point. And I showed him and I let him pick out what he needed. And he said thank you and he excused himself and he left. But a couple weeks later, when we held the next food bank, he came back again. And he brought back things that he wasn't going to eat that we'd given him the first time.
Yeah.
And he traded it for a few more things.
Yeah.
How did Terry first hear about it?
You know, I'm really not sure.
I think with the Nebraska's aging society they actually give out that list. And I think I remember him telling me that they told him there was these places that he could get food and assistance he needed. Because he was on a very small income. And he was getting a retirement from Canada. Basically, he's actually a Canada citizen back then, and he's been living all this time, and he's very little on his Medicare and stuff like that. And his VA, when we first started met him, he was still battling out, trying to get that all settled and get things caught up with his VA. So he was kind of fixed on income. That he was not making very much at all. So he came here at first, and he never went to anywhere else. He just came to our place, and I think once we established that rapport with him, he was continuously never going to, even if he came most of the time, later when I met him, he wasn't even getting any food. He just came here for the fellowship and just to talk, and we became very good friends with him. He's just that kind of guy.
When we met Terry, he was 82 years old, and his needs were unique. He did need food, but like I said, with him not having, full set of teeth, he had specific needs. And so he named a couple of things that he could use or could eat that we didn't have. And so I talked to Bud about it, and we actually purchased a few items, and I offered to bring it to his apartment, and that's how we kind of got to know him on a personal level. We started to deliver a few things to his apartment. But like Bud said, after a little while, it wasn't even about the food or what we could provide for him physically anymore. He came for the fellowship. And that's the point at which I said, Bud, you got to meet this guy. He's fascinating. He came for just a few months, and then I found out, or actually he found out and then told me that he had pancreatic cancer. He came for a few months before he got ill. And when I saw him again, I said, "You've lost a lot of weight." And he informed me that he had been in the hospital for 30 days doing radiation treatment.
Yeah.
After that point, he started to lose his appetite and was losing weight slowly. But he was a big guy when we met him, and a little bit of weight he could afford to lose. By Christmas or so, he'd lost quite a bit. And starting in January and February is when his health really started to decline.
I had helped him several times with little things like his van was broke, so I fixed what I can on his van. And he goes, "I owe you anything." And I said, "Well, you know what? I ask you one thing. You come to this church all the time. Why don't you come on a Sunday and just hear the music and listen to what he's got to say here? And you might like it. You meet some new people, and there's some really good." Because he always tells us how we're so nice, how great we are. I said, "You think I'm nice? There's 300 or 400 people here that are just even better than me. They're more awesome than this. You should enjoy it." I don't want to die. I know the Lord, and I'm just, I'm comfortable where I'm at. And I kept pursuing it, and I'm a new Christian, so I'm kind of learning how to do this thing. I'm asking her for some help and some guidance on this thing, and he just needed a different approach each time. And I got him to we talked more about Jesus and the Lord and what we need to know more about him and everything. And he got more comfortable with it a little bit more later. As he got sicker, and I know we started praying with him, and he really appreciated that. And I think he even joined a couple times with us that were saying a prayer. He'd say some things too with it. So it got to that point where I finally said, I got a small group we go to. We just sit around, we have really good food, we talk, we have a great time, we laugh, we talk about what we had in service going on. Maybe you should come try it out. And I just was surprised when he said yes. I would love to do that. And I'm like, all right, he's already backed out of several times come to church with me. I'm waiting for that other shoe to drop. But surprisingly, when I went to go pick him up, he was ready to go, coat on, ready to go. So let's just do this. And it was exciting. And he lived on the 3rd floor, so it was kind of hard to get him moving around. So I actually carried him down the stairs to the truck, and he could barely walk back then because we were in a wheelchair then.
He declined by that point so much that he was in a wheelchair and had lost a lot of weight.
Yeah.
But when we first met him and we were beginning to connect with him on a personal level, we were asking about family and about history. And basically he had 2 kids and had been divorced for a very long time. He'd lived in this apartment for 23 years.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Same apartment.
Unfortunately, when he got sick, he did contact his kids to let them know, because he'd had no contact with them for years. And sadly, they said that even though he was not doing well, they didn't really want to have a relationship with him. They weren't willing to forgive him.
Yeah.
When we talked to Terry about the Lord at the beginning, he would always buffer us and be like, I'm all right, I'm all right.
Yeah.
Or he would say, when he feels close to his maker is when he's out there under the stars.
Yeah.
And so he didn't necessarily want to come and be social and, attend a church service. So we tried to just keep it personal and just be Jesus with skin on and just kind of minister to him and continue to pray about it and trust that the Lord would give us a time that was right. Tried to openly and directly share the gospel with him a few times, and he said, I was raised Catholic, I know all that. And so I kind of felt like at that time that even though we were ministering to him and I felt himself softening toward the gospel, he wasn't yet ready, and I wasn't sure it was something he could ever receive from us. Mm-hmm. And so our small group had been praying for him for a good long time.
Yep.
And so he'd lost a lot of weight. He was in a wheelchair and all those things in March. And he, like Bud said, he couldn't really get around. And so he was dependent on us to go and get him or to take him different places. Although he was very headstrong, and he drove for a long time, like way longer than he should have.
He should have, yep.
And we tried to talk to him about it, but he was very stubborn and did not want to give up those keys. But by the time he finally agreed to come to our small group, we posted in our Facebook group that he was coming, and everybody was so excited. So we showed that to him about how all these people were so excited about him coming and them being able to meet him, because he's not an overly social person. And not only that, but he had very little self-worth, I guess.
Yep.
He began to tell us that he needed us to take care of things medically for him, and we did assume his medical power of attorney. He talked to us about the final arrangements that we would have to make for him eventually. And he told us that he didn't want an obituary in the paper.
Nope.
He didn't want to be buried. He was happy with being cremated, and he gave me a whiskey bottle, and he said, here, just put my ashes in this.
And we did not do that. We did not do that.
But he didn't want any service. He didn't want us to necessarily even contact anybody and let him know when it was his time to go. And I think that he did that because he didn't really value who he was or what he had to contribute. He didn't think that he would be missed.
Yeah.
When
He also
in
didn't
reality,
probably didn't
that
know the
wasn't
stuff that was available that the VA was offering.
when in reality that wasn't
Yeah.
the truth at all. So he came to small group.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, it was awesome.
He only came to small group one time.
Yeah, and it's because he got so sick after that time frame, he couldn't even get out of the house and everything. We stopped taking him to the doctors because there was nothing we could do. But the small
So-
group was probably the best day he ever had. He was excited, and we got there. Everybody greeted him and like they knew him, and
The
he just felt
Keegan's
accepted.
Keegan's that hosts the small group have a dog, and that dog jumped up on his lap, and he got to hold that dog, and he laughed and cried and laughed and cried, and he loved that. He got to spend those moments with that dog. That dog brought him a lot of joy, and so we welcomed him in. We offered him something to eat, but of course by now he's not eating.
No.
He's lost 100 pounds by this point. And so he came in, and like I said, he's very hard of hearing, so he had some trouble participating in group. But when it came his time to share, he would share he would share a memory, and he would say, "Thank you for allowing me to be here," and
Yeah.
get tearful and choked up a little bit. But I think the really powerful thing about him coming to our small group, even though he was physically only capable of coming that one time, is that when group finished, one of our members went and talked to him one-on-one, and they shared the gospel with him and led him in the sinner's prayer.
Yeah, Rod Rogers. I knew I could talk to him, and I just asked him to say, "I need you to help me out with this. You have a better approach than I have tried to do this." And he took to Rob, and he took to Daryl too, because they share the same common boots as in the military. He was a medic, and Daryl's an ex-medic too. So with Rob, it was so wonderful to sit. I stood off and watched, and it was amazing to sit there and listen, hear everything he's saying, and he repeated everything he was saying. And he actually, when he prayed for him, even Terry actually prayed also another prayer with him. And I think the funny part was the call we got back at the house. When we finally get everybody home, we usually get a call about midnight that, "Hey, I'm not doing too good. I'm not feeling well," or "Hey, I'm okay. I'm home now," or because he's been out. So finally, he calls us late at night, and he goes, after he got done, that he was fine. He was great.
the change was apparent.
Instantly. It was amazing.
It was.
And he prayed almost every day. We talked, "Hey, did you pray today?" "Yes, I prayed this morning." I said, "Excellent." And then I prayed with him again when I go see him. And I think we even said several prayers with him the days right before the weekend that came.
Yeah. He declined very rapidly after that night at group. And our group is on a Tuesday. That Saturday was food bank. And I went to check on him after I left here, probably around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And we'd been actively seeking placement for him outside of his apartment, but he had told us, "I want to die at home." But with being on the 3rd floor of the apartment and not knowing how long he was going to live there and that kind of thing, we wanted him to be more comfortable, so we were trying to find him a place to go. And I'll be darned if he wasn't stubborn enough that he got things the way he wanted them. So that Tuesday we had gone to a group, and that's when he had accepted the Lord. And we talked to him and saw him every day after that. But we started seeing changes very quickly. He got confused a day or two after that. And by Saturday, just 4 days later, he was in the active process of dying. So when I left here, I found him that way. And from that point on, hospice had been involved for a couple of weeks, but from that point on, we never left his side.
No.
So
We stayed there, 36 some hours with him.
we were there 3 days.
Yeah, 3 days.
Yeah, 3 days. His last lucid moments with me, Bud was at the fire station and I was with him. And I said, "Terry, do you know what's going on?" And he said, no, not really. And I said, well, do you know who I am? And he said, Meredith. And I said, that's right, because he'd already called me 2 or 3 other names. By that point, he was confused. And I gave him a hug, and he said, Meredith and Bud. And I said, that's right. And I said, do you know what's going on? He said, no, not really. And I said, well, you're pretty sick. And he said, but I'm going to get better. And I said, I don't know about that, Terry. We'll have to see. And he said, I'll be better by Monday. And I said, well, we'll see what happens. And he said, but in the meantime, I want to go to church. And I said, you do? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, we might have to have church just here in your apartment, Terry. And he said, that'd be all right, too.
Yep.
And then he went back to being somewhat delirious. But he told me he'd be better by Monday. And I'll be darned if he didn't go home to see the Lord on Monday. So
Yep.
Bud got off work at the fire station that Sunday morning, and he came and relieved me to where I could at least go home and clean up and do some things. And then I came back, and Monday I had to work, but Bud stayed with him. And Bud called me Monday afternoon, and he said, I think we're done. So we called hospice, and they came and did the final preparations.
Yep.
And we made the arrangements that he had asked us to make. And we had him cremated like he asked us to. And I think the really cool part about the story is that when Bud went to pick up the ashes, he took the whiskey bottle that had been given to us. And they said, you know, we've never done a whiskey bottle before. But they said, you know what? He's a vet, and he's entitled to this beautiful wooden box with this Air Force emblem on it and this beautiful velvet bag to place it in.
Yep.
They said, can we do that for him instead? And we said, that'd be great, thank you. So they did that.
Yep.
And in doing so, we also found out that he has the privilege and the right that he has earned because of what he's, because of his
military.
worth,
Yep.
that he can be buried in the Sarpy County Veterans Memorial Cemetery. So not only that, but he's going to be buried with full military rights.
Yeah.
The whole shebang, the 21 gun salute and everything. And so I think the thing that gets me the most is that he was entitled to or allowed to receive so much because of who he was as a vet, that he was entitled to way more than what he ever expected. I think that he had sold himself so short instead of realizing what he could have had. And I think about that a lot, and I equate it with who we are in Christ, because so many times we sell ourselves short and we think that we're not worthy of certain things or certain aspects. And then I realize that who I am in Christ allows us and enables us and entitles us to more benefits than what we ever tap into. Those were some of my favorite moments when Terry, the last week of his life was probably my favorite. There was so many wonderful things, but that last week where he truly was learning who he was in Christ because he had accepted what Jesus had done for him, he began to look forward to and accept the fact that he was going to die.
He wasn't scared anymore.
He wasn't scared anymore, and that was really cool.
The real cool thing about the whole thing is that we met one guy at our storehouse with a story, with a light that had no meaning, and that we felt that we could talk to and we could help him out. And there's many people that come to our storehouse every month that have those kind of stories. And with our storehouse, which I'm sure we're probably a very unique one, when we check them in, we ask them, what can we do for you? What can we help you with? And it's just not the stuff of putting in a box and feeding you or getting you some clothes. What can we do with you spiritually, and what we can do to help you out as best we can? And that they keep coming, and they keep coming to us, and they appreciate that. And I think that's where, with more people helping us do.
And that's what we want to do. We don't want to pretend like we love people. We really want to love them.
Yep.
The group that has volunteered at the storehouse has definitely evolved over the last 3 years. We've had a very tight group, but people come and people go sometimes. And so we have been at times where we were kind of lean, and I went to my life group and I said, hey, I'm short on Saturday. Can you guys help? And we had people from our life group that stepped up, and they've joined, and it's been consistently that way.
Yep.
And I tell you what, our lives have not been the same since we joined a life group, that's for sure.
That's our
It's-
second family. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I look forward to on my Tuesdays to go and have this fellowship with these people. They're wonderful.
Definitely. So they've stepped in, they've stepped up, and they've done everything that needs to be done. Our life group has been such a big part of the storehouse, of what happened with Terry, of what happens with us in our everyday life.
Oh yeah, we're connected to so bad that we're visiting friends that are in the hospital because they had to roll their vehicle during the wintertime, or someone's down and there needs something moved or something. We're there for everybody now.
Yeah.
Our group is always helping each other out. It's a connection.
Yeah, I think we have the best life group.
We do.
But no, we've really been blessed, and the role that they played in Terry's life has just been pivotal for us. I know that Terry affected us in a way that will never be the same,
No.
you know, we want his legacy to go on through this. But our life group has done more for the storehouse and for so many other people whose stories we have yet to tell. In fact, Bud mentioned earlier that some of the volunteers at our storehouse consistently started out as clients.
Yep.
People who came in to get food, people who came in to get some hygiene or whatever. And, you know, there's different kinds of people in society, and some may never feel comfortable in a church service because of social anxieties, or, you know, we have a couple of people with mental illnesses, and they're comfortable serving at the storehouse. They're comfortable being with us, and they'll tell you that this is their church, and yet they may never come to a service. But we minister to them.
And they help
And
ask us for prayer and everything.
They ask us for prayer. They do believe. They just socially have a hard time coming to service. And so the outreach that we've done through the storehouse, I think it's that ripple effect. You know, you throw a pebble into a pond, and that ripple just gets bigger and bigger. And I know that there's been lots of people impacted.
I believe so. I just think it was great. I mean, I don't think I'm a hero. I don't think anything great about me. I just like the idea that I actually helped somebody that needed it. Not because it makes me feel good, but I was able to make him feel good.
One of the really cool things with Terry, too, is that he didn't have a lot. He lived in an apartment for 23 years, and he had, you know, some small appliances, a coffee pot, and a cooler that you could put drinks in, and he had an adding machine. He loved his adding machine, things like that. And he said, take them to the church and give them to people that can use them.
Yeah.
And so before he passed away, we gathered a lot of his things up because he knew that his death was inevitable at that point. And he said, pass it on. And so we brought these things, and that gave him such a feeling of worthiness to be able to contribute, I think, and to give back. He didn't have a whole lot, but what he had, he gave. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's really cool, too, that he sowed into the ministry the way that he could. So that's
Yeah, he was always wanted to make sure we got taken care of with the stuff that he had there. It was great.
Anything else you guys like to say to the church?
Join your small group, and we could use your help at the storehouse. It's a wonderful place to meet people and minister what you're learning and what you're getting out of this church. It is a great place to make that connection with the outside world.
There's no doubt in my mind that I've been the one who's been most blessed by this. I love to give and to help people, but it's been such a blessing to be able to give, not to receive, but to give. And if you're looking for a way to be blessed, then come and give. It's something you can't get rid of, because the more you give, the more you get.
I think even the kids that help at our storehouse are
Yes.
just,
Some amazing
they
teenagers.
see what we're doing, and they're so want to be there to help. Even the smallest ones of 8 or 9 or 10 years old, they're getting it. They're enjoying this. They love this help. They love to be here and helping out. It's amazing to get someone that young to start out with this kind of stuff. It's amazing.
Yeah, they do. We have a great group,
Yeah.
definitely.